Going to be a minute or two here. I'm having some serious difficulty getting files moved over from one machine to another, and so I'm restarting. So we'll be a couple minutes delayed. I only have about half of your assignments moved over to the computer that I need. I know we're going to be short a couple of people today, so once we get up and running here, well, it'll be a minute yet. Almost there. All right, I think I've got them moved over. Terrible weather we're having, huh? I don't know how you guys put up with this. All right, let's see who we don't have here. All right, now that we have that taken care of, we're missing a few people. Okay, so we got everything we need there. All right, so we are going to obviously do the first thing we always do, which is rip your photos to shreds right in front of your eyes. Actually, I've glanced at them, but I haven't looked that closely because I really haven't had the time today. But we are going to look closely at them, and we're going to look. Most of you did what I wanted you to and sent the color versions as well as the black and white. So you're the ones that we can really, really poke fingers at because we can go in and see. Sorry, I'm getting a message here about my Creative Cloud. Anyway, you're the ones that we can go in and really look at in a little more detail. Then after we do that, we'll get into, we're just sort of running through these topics, the new topics in a logical sequence. So what we do today will kind of build on a little bit of what we have done in the past. We have 3 or 4 more segments that we have to get through. I was hoping that we were going to probably get together face to face here real soon, but it seems that there has been a bit of a small outbreak on campus. Does anybody know about that? I got emailed about 2 of my students in the other class who were not eligible for in-seat classes because of that. So yeah, I'm going to hang on until I know a little bit more about what's going on there. All right, so let's get into, I wonder if so you guys said that, or somebody told me that when I share my screen, that you don't see the menus of the programs that I'm in. I'm wondering if I just shared my desktop, if you would actually be able to see everything that's there. Let me try that. All right, so I'm actually sharing a little bit of everything, and I'm in Adobe Bridge right now. Do you guys see Adobe Bridge? All right, so do you see the menus at the top of the screen as I go through them? You do. Oh, so maybe that's the key. So now let's see what happens if I switch programs. Let's go to Photoshop, and I'm just going to open any file. I don't know what any of these are. Let's try that. All right, so that's I've got a black and white image up. Do you guys see that? Wow. So all this time we have been doing it the wrong way. I've been sharing and unsharing and going back and forth, and it looks like all I had to do was share my desktop, and then no matter what I do, you see it all. Wow, glad we finally figured that out after how many weeks? All right, so good. You should see, and I know why they do that. It's for privacy, in case somebody has something on their computer, on their desktop or whatever that they don't want you to see or whatever. But that's, in this case, we just need to, make everything available so we can, we don't waste as much time. Okay. So Carly is up first, and we have, why am I seeing, oh, there it is. I was going to say, I had 2 color and 2 black and white, but I had 3 color and 1 black and white when I opened it up. I'm not sure why it had to update, but it did. So let's look at the color images first. Oops, I want to get these in. Well, it doesn't matter. Let's just do it this way. So we have 2 images, relatively similar. And then the black and white of this, we did that. And I'm going to ask you in a minute why you made some of the choices that you made. And then the black and white of the other one is this. So the first question I have is, you flipped it from left to right. Well, no, not that one, the other one. I'm sorry. This one was flipped from its original orientation to that. Tell me why you did that.
I was messing around with it and I was just like, well, what if I messed with it so it was from left to right? So that's what I was. Oh,
So,
I actually like that a lot better than how I had it originally.
and that's fine. Sometimes we just like it better and we don't really know why. There's usually a good reason for it. It's usually some subconscious thing that is rooted in some of the art rules that, we may loosely know. Normally, I would say this one, as I look at the image, I would normally say that I think the original would probably work better. And the reason for that is just simply that, again, since we read left to right, we're coming in, and using the leading lines of your legs and arms and everything to lead up into you. But if you go back to this one, you can make a case for saying that your gaze is going from left to right. And so there's room out in front of you for us to kind of, sort of go in a direction that you're going. I don't think there's any right or wrong here. Um, I'm happy either way. So it just comes down to personal preference on that. I'm looking at the other image. I do want to open that black and white, or the original rather, and see something. Um, so you should be seeing that image in the camera raw. Good. All right. So if I go to, actually, I can't do that in here. It's really strange. One of the things you cannot do in camera raw, at least I don't think you couldn't do it before. Let me desaturate. See if there's another way to do this. Well, I can do it in the basic tab, but then I know I'm not going to have control. Let me try the color mixer and just desaturate all of our colors and then play with the hues. Yeah, I didn't think it would work. So it's one of the oddities about, I want to reset all of this. It's one of the oddities about Camera Raw. As much control as you have on your raw file, this is the one thing that still works better in Photoshop. So I'm going to open it up in Photoshop instead. So if I go in and play with the colors in the raw file, by desaturating it, I don't have the ability to mix the sliders and make certain colors lighter and darker the way I do in Photoshop. That's really kind of unusual, but that's just the way it is. So we're going to add the black and white filter to this. And then we're going to play with the colors because I'm looking at like the greens that are in that card. Like, we can go completely black on that and make it very, kind of dark and mysterious. We can make it a whole lot lighter. I'm not sure what other colors. Oh, there's blue in there as well. So yeah, some of it's a bit cyan, some of it's a little blue. I think I like the blue dialed down to make that card, the figure on the card stand out a little bit more. And then as I turn that on and off, there's not a ton of other color there. There is some green, a little bit of foliage starting. Hey, we're getting buds coming out. But that doesn't really factor in as much as the figure on the card. So let me save that for a second. Actually, I can flatten it down. We'll just save it as a JPEG. And we'll put it in your folder. Strange, it didn't ask me if I wanted to replace. Let's see what happens when we go in. All right, so that's yours. That's mine. There's not a lot of difference, but I see two differences right off the bat. Do you see anything?
Yeah, the lighting on my forehead is much brighter and sharper than it is in the other photo.
Yeah, it's actually in the left one, which is your image. Your forehead's actually blown out, like there's no detail there, and
Yeah.
also with the bridge of your nose and on your cheek and a little bit on the back of your hand. The other one has detail in those areas. And then the other thing is that I think the figure on the card does stand out just a little bit more
Yeah.
by just increasing that green, the brightness level of the green up a little bit. I think overall, I would still probably take this image and adjust the brightness overall. So I'll just take a, yeah, as I look at the histogram, I can see that the highlights don't go all the way to the end. So I can bring those into there and still know that I'm not losing detail in your forehead. Maybe back the midtones off a little bit and then pull the shadows up just a touch. So that takes the muddiness away, gives it a little bit more oomph, I guess. Let me close this, we'll save it. Let's look at those two again. Yeah, so the one on the left now is the one that I did. The one on the right is the one you did. What did you use? What software did you use to make the conversion?
What was it called? Hold on. It was something like Photo Pro or something. It was a free program that I could get because I didn't have access to Photoshop.
Okay, that's fine. Just, kind of points out the reasoning behind why, why they charge $10 a month for a program like this, which used to be, before they started the or what do they call that? Their subscription process where you pay monthly. You used to pay every time a new version came out. You had to buy the version. You had to, physically download the new version or get it in a box or whatever. And it was typically about $180 every time you did that, anywhere from $180 to $250. And they did it about every 18 months. So it actually came out to be about $10 a month if you did that. This way, you just get immediate access to the new features. But that, the differences between a free piece of software, for me, not that your image is bad, but that missing detail in your face is a little bit, of an issue. Like the image recorded it. Your camera recorded that detail, so why not, take advantage of it and let it be there. All right, so let's look at your other. We did look at this a little bit. Again, there's not a ton of color. The blues that are in here are fairly, I got the wrong image selected. The blues that are in here are fairly muted. And everything else is relatively monochromatic. So I don't think anything would be gained by, as far as the color and the brightness levels of the colors. But again, it's just a little bit of that highlight on the forehead that I know the detail is there. I could see a little bit of it in your original, and I know that I could massage that and bring it out a little bit more. Let's just quickly do that just to look at some of the options here. So typically when I see that in an area, when I see a little bit of a burned out highlight, I'm going to pull that highlight slider down, and you can see right off the bat. Let me zoom this in so you can kind of really see what's going on. So that's the way it came out of the camera. And as we pull that down, you just start to see more and more detail show up in that area. Then we can back it out a little bit. We can increase the shadows a little bit because, I love the detail that's in the bark of the tree. I want to be able to see a little bit in the jeans. So we'd increase the shadows, maybe decrease the blacks to give it a little more punch. And maybe just a touch overall on the, on what did I do on the whites there, or yeah, on the whites. So if we look at it before and after, just a couple little massages, but look even at the detail in your t-shirt, the highlight along the top of your arm and so forth. And even the sky in the background, there's some blue up there, which I could really enhance even more. You go into the color mixing area and increase the saturation of the blues and decrease the luminance. And it gives it even more, if you look left and right now, there's a big difference between that sky area. And, like I said, the nice thing is that, your camera records it. So, let's find something that is able to bring that out and really make that image pop a little bit more. So again, not knocking anything that you did here. I just wanted to use your images as an example um, to see what kind of additional detail we could bring out. But you didn't do anything wrong. You did everything right, as a matter of fact. Just wanted to play with it a little bit and see where we got.
Could have worked a little bit harder to get it a little bit different, and it would have been fine. No, I
And
appreciate the comments. I appreciate it.
yeah, I mean, you know, are you going to do this to every single picture you ever take? No, you know, every snapshot, every whatever. But for things that are important or for things that you're going to do for class, because obviously, wouldn't it be nice for me to go in and open one of your files and go, wow, there's nothing more I can do. It's like perfect. Wouldn't you love to hear that just once? You really were close. You really were. But again, not having access to the software or to that software does hinder you a little bit. The nice thing about the subscription is that you not only get Photoshop and Bridge, but you also get Lightroom, which is probably for people that don't have any experience at all in any of those programs. That's what I would recommend that you work in, because it's much more streamlined for photography. It doesn't have anything other than photography related things in it. It's a little easier to understand. And now there are tons and tons of free things out there that you can download for Lightroom, presets and things that you literally just with the click of a button can transform your image into all sorts of things. It's still garbage in, garbage out. You don't want to have a crappy image to start with and try to, you know, over filter it to the point where it's not, you know, it's still going to be garbage in, garbage out. But if you have a decent image to start with, some of the presets can really be kind of cool along those lines. All right, so I didn't really beat you up, but I've kind of been on you long enough here, so we'll move on. But everything. So as far as let me get a folder in here. As far as between the two images, which one do you like better?
I personally like the one with the card.
Yeah, I think I would have picked that too. I think, again, there's a little more story there, even though we don't really know exactly what the story is. We know there is one, or we believe there is one, and we kind of want to make it up in our heads. So, and I like the fact that you're, oh, actually, is that your, yeah, this one was yours. I like the fact that you did crop it in a little tighter, which is good. I
Yeah, I
think,
picked the card I did because it's the devil in the major arcana, and that's my devil card in the deck. So I was like, okay, that works.
oh, I won't make any personal comments about that. You know,
Yeah.
if you and the devil are tight, that's cool with me. So those cards, tell me just real quickly about those cards. What are they exactly? Because I'm not familiar with them.
They're so the version of the deck is a Nightmare Before Christmas deck.
Oh, okay.
I
Tim
just
Burton.
love that movie a lot. So I was just like trying to find whatever card I thought was gonna look right, and I was like, oh, the devil card, and then I could do a pose like insinuating that there's a secret or bad things are coming because it's the devil card, and usually
And
that card does not mean good things.
yeah, so you've seen the face of the card, but nobody else has, and you're just sort of, yeah, I get it. That's probably pretty close to what I would have imagined for this. So yeah, I like the storytelling behind it. So that's the one we are going with.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
For Carly, did you use a tripod to take these pictures or something?
Yes, so I had a tripod, and I found out that my phone has an app that I can connect to my camera. So I had the wireless remote connected. So like in the picture where I'm sitting, I have my phone literally in between my knees, so that way I could take the picture, and I had it set on like a timer.
That's awesome.
Yeah, most, and I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys before. I know I mentioned it to the other class that most, like if you do have a digital SLR, whether it's Canon or Nikon or whatever, they almost always have software. A lot of times it comes with a camera, but very few people actually ever look at what comes with the camera. But they all have software that will allow you to control the camera from your phone. Sometimes you can change, aperture and shutter speed and all of that, ISO right from the camera as well, plus fire it, which is a huge plus. Sometimes you can even get a live view, like you can see on your phone what the camera is seeing. And so that's kind of cool. I mean, it's a really interesting way to, if you have to work alone, that's kind of the way to do it. All
That's
right.
crazy. I was sitting here like, how is she taking these photos? And they're in, they're like in focus and everything. I'm like, wow.
Yeah, so the apps a lot of times will actually have touch focus on the screen too. If you simply touch the area of the live view that you want to be in focus, the camera will focus on that spot. They don't all do that, but a lot of them do. So yeah, if you have an app for your phone that came with your camera, sometimes they're a third party, but usually the ones that come with the camera work pretty well. So yeah, good way to work alone. You're at ISO, so I'm sorry, aperture was f4, which gave you a little bit of background blur, which is helpful with a background like this because there's a lot going on back there. And then 4,000th of a second on the shutter speed. So you, at a 4,000th, you probably could have thrown the camera up in the air, taken the picture, and it still would have been sharp. Not probably really, but just somewhere around there. All right, let's move on. If Hannah is still with us, we tend to lose Hannah a lot, but I think we're still here. All right, so this, is that a hydrangea? Is that what that is?
I have no idea. I just saw it and I thought it was pretty.
I think
took
it's a
picture of it.
hydrangea. I have those in my backyard, and the weird thing is that they will come up either blue or pink depending on the pH of the soil, and you can actually alter the pH of the soil if you want the other color. They make stuff you can put on the ground to change the color of these flowers. It's pretty cool. So let's take a look at this one, and let's just see in Photoshop what would happen if we played and with the color sliders and see if we get anything different. So we're in the blue family clearly, so we could have taken that really, really high, or we could have taken it really low. And I think on this, with this one, high looks really good. And then the green leaves, we want them, I still want contrast there, but I don't want them black. So I think, probably bringing those up a little bit would be kind of cool. Maybe increase the yellow a little bit in the leaves. Let's see how that works. And then let's just see, because if I were going to do it, if this was me, that's probably about where I would set that file. Let's see what it looks like compared to yours. Let's just save it as a PSD. That way we don't get confused. All right, so close that. There's the PSD. Yeah, so yours, tell me when you made the conversion, first of all, tell me how you did it. Like what software did you use, and did you do it the way we did in class, or was there something else that you used?
It was just an app that I had, and I messed around with the saturation and stuff on it.
So when we're looking for, especially in black and white, because in black and white, we are reduced to tones and we don't have color information to guide us at all. So in black and white, we're typically looking for a way to make our subject pop as much as possible. And so I think I probably would have gone, I do like the leaves. I like your leaves, even your bark, better than what I've got, but I think I like the brighter flower contrasted against that a little bit more. But again, you would have to have used the method that we looked at in class inside Photoshop to have gotten that. So if you didn't, again, if you don't have access to it, you wouldn't be able to do it the way we did. And so that's kind of the reason I'm opening these files and showing you guys all of this stuff. Just so you're aware of it, even if you can't do it, you need to be aware that when you go to convert your files into black and white, you really want to have as much control as possible. So whatever you're using, hopefully it gives you a little bit of control, and really play with that and see what you can. And so I'm just kind of showing you the differences of what you can get doing it the other way. And so that's the only file we have to work with. So that goes in, and Jaden is up next. Okay, so your black and white, I don't believe, let me see if I can open this. Yeah, it's not showing here actually as a raw file. It's giving me error messages, so I can't actually look at it. So we'll just look at this one. Now on my screen, and I don't know about the way you guys are seeing it, this is a very dark image. Overall, like I think the image probably should have a little more brightness to it. We can't go in because I can't open the original, which is sad because it's got 50 megabytes worth of data there. It just does not want to open in Camera Raw.
Anna, your microphone is still on.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm trying to fix it.
I usually use a sock in the mouth. That's usually what works with me. Yeah, I can't seem to get this to do. It won't even give me the option now for Camera Raw. So anyway, so we won't waste time on that. I am going to open this up and just give it a little bit of brightness, which again, I'm just going to add a levels adjustment on this because, wow, look at our histogram. Look how there is nothing beyond the midpoint up. There's nothing that's white or even close to white in this image. So we can really pull this back a good bit all the way to there before we lose anything. I won't go quite that far because I'm going to pull the midtones a little bit as well. But yeah, the difference, I'm hoping you're seeing that from that to that is, pardon the pun, it's sort of like night and day. So again, tell me what you used, what software you used to convert your image.
I use Photoshop,
Did you?
but I
Okay.
just used the first thing you showed us. You just like click it and it'll turn into black and white.
Yeah, so remember when we talked about the black and whites, we said that there were at least seven different ways to convert to black and white, and that 5 or almost 6 of them sucked. The only one that really, for me, is a good black and white conversion is this black and white adjustment layer, because it's the only one that gives us, or I'm sorry, that was our levels. It's in here. It won't do me any good to access it now because it's not a color image. But this right here is the only one that lets me take these sliders and control how much of each color, the brightness level of each color. Again, it won't do it on an already black and white image, but that's what you would have been able to do is control, like especially in the King. There's some color in that King. You would have been able to control the brightness levels of each individual color in that King and play around with that a little bit. But then again, the overall brightness was just looks a little drab and needed a little pick me up. So yeah, when you look at the pull the histogram up again on this adjustment layer, hopefully my beach ball ever stops spinning. There we go. And yeah, it's just showing that there's literally no data that's beyond about a 115 or so, 120 on that 0 to 255 scale. So yeah, I could literally bring it back that far and still not lose any detail in those cards. Just looking to see, I don't know if this was a poker hand or not. Boy, if it is, it's a lousy poker hand. Yeah, it's not a, yeah, not a straight, not a flush, not a, but I like the fact that, yeah, I think I really would have liked the fact that all of your cards were low value except for the one, because that would have really made that card stand out. This would have even been a good image to leave and I'm not a big fan of this, but there are times where it's appropriate to leave the king in color because it is such a colorful card. Everything else really, I mean, the diamonds obviously have, red, but if you took the entire image to black and white, left your king in color, now you're really going to have, something that stands out. I do like the slimline crop that you've got on this. I think I just would have probably left the queen that's on the right edge out. I don't think you could have cropped it without losing a bit of the 4, but there's just so little of that showing that I probably would have taken it out. But other than that, I do like the crop. Not going to save that. Oh, hang on. I just had a little dialogue in the background that I didn't know I had. Not sure what it's trying to do. Maybe it's trying to open that raw file. Okay, so that's the dimensions, 8-bit. Let's just see what happens if we hit OK. I've never seen this dialogue before. Whoa.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a little damaged. And it may have just happened, during upload or download or something too. It's hard to say. No
That
big
was
deal.
kind of cool, actually. I like that.
So there's a technique that we do it's actually the very first week of the advanced class called Step and Repeat that can simulate stuff like this, but in a little bit of a cooler way. Let me see if I can get this closed. Don't save. There we go. All right, Jaden, let me pull that in. Move down to Caleb. All right, so as I look at the colors that we have in the image, really only have the blues, a little bit in the red tones. The cat's fur is yellows and reds. I don't know that I would have done anything differently with like the little blue thing that's behind the cat or the ball over here. I like the fact that they're a little darker and a little less intrusive. I do still think that image could be perked up a little bit, but I love the texture in it. I see that there's a little, like there's some decent texture in the original file, but there's even more in the black and white. Did you use anything to enhance the texture when you converted this?
I don't think he's here.
Oh, I thought he was. Where are we at here? Oh, you're right. He's not. I've got him marked as absent. So, Caleb, if you watch this later, go ahead and answer as if you were here. But yeah, I'm seeing, it looks to me like there has been a little bit of processing that I like that's brought out a little bit of detail, a little more detail in this cat's face than what I'm seeing even in the original. It also looks like, now that I'm looking at it closely, like it was shot through a window, because I see this reflection here right above the cat's head that I didn't notice before.
Yeah,
So-
this is our bobcat at the Good Zoo, so he's in
Okay.
his enclosure.
Yeah, I kept looking at him thinking, wow, that's a really pretty cat. Like, I don't really think I've seen a cat that looks like that. So that explains it. Yeah, I see the reflection there, but I think it's a good black and white conversion. I love the additional texture, and I don't know if that was an accidental thing or whether he intentionally added that, but it's good. I kind of like that. So we can't ask him any more questions. So we will move on. Brooke is up next. So I haven't gone in to do this yet, but I'm gonna guess based on the colors that I see in the original that I probably would have processed this a little differently, because in the black and white that I'm seeing here, again, it's a little flat looking. We don't have a lot of pop and contrast in some of those colors. So let's just see what happens and if we're able to do it. All right, so we'll take the black and white adjustment layer. And I know we've got these oranges, and they're a little bit on the red side as well. Let's pull the greens. Strangely enough, not a lot of green there. What do we have?
That's what I thought. I was trying to do the greens and it wasn't moving anywhere. So I was
So-
really confused.
A lot of times when you look, so for example, the greens that are here, a lot more often than you would think, the greens are actually more represented by the yellow slider than they are the green. So if I take that yellow slider, watch how they darken. The problem, and I like them dark like that. The problem is I want this main flower to be brighter, and let it pop out against everything else. And I think the only way to do that, let's pull the blues down because I've got some purples, maybe the magentas. Yeah, let's just darken those up a little bit just to get a little more contrast. So the only way to really do what I would like to see would be to process this twice. Once for this flower and, to make it bright, and then again to make these dark and combine the two images. So, but doing it just the way, what we have in front of us, just doing it one time, I'm not sure we're going to get it any better. Let's see what happens. I still think it's going to need a little adjustment in levels. So let's do that. Yeah, our shadows are very weak. You can see that on the histogram. There we go. That definitely helps. All right, let me save that. And then we'll check. Should have saved, there you go. I was going to say, it should have saved it in here. It'll take a second to build that thumbnail. And we'll compare one against the other once we do. It's building very slowly. There we go. So, yeah, my image is on the left, your image is on the right. And honestly, there are things I like about both of them. I like the fact that your candle's not as blown out. Yeah, this is a tough image because as much as you think there's a lot of different color there to play with, so much of it is in the same color family that you really kind of are adjusting it all at the same time. So I don't know that I really like one over the other anymore. I do think that on yours, and I'll open yours here, I do think on this one, it probably could have benefited by just a little adjustment of the brightness levels. So we'll pull highlights down, give it a little more punch in the shadows. That's really where it needs it. And we go like, yeah, you can see the little bit of the muddiness just sort of disappears. And then if I don't like the fact that it's given me a little bit less detail here, I can just take a black paintbrush and paint over that and basically remove the effect that I just added from that area. Yeah, it just looks much sharper and crisper with that turned on. But other than that, as far as the conversion is concerned, you probably couldn't have done any better with the image that you had. Again, it looks like you picked a great image, right? You're like, wow, I got a really colorful image here. I can probably get all sorts of stuff, but other than these purples that are out here, and they're not that far off, the rest of almost everything else in there is going to be in that yellow, red, and just a touch into the green. So it's kind of tough to get what you were looking at. And there is a little bit of loss of contrast even on your original. So you certainly didn't hurt the image at all by doing what you did. All right, let's throw that there and move to Max. Okay, so Max, I don't have color images to compare to.
I actually, the first one, this one, I sent you I actually emailed you the color one because the black and white one just made me angry because it doesn't look nearly as good as the color image does. Like the color image is really cool, I think.
I, for whatever reason, did not get that email.
Well, I just sent it to you at the beginning of class because I
Oh,
was
okay.
thinking about it.
And I know while I'm in this room, I have got this black hole of internet. So chances of me actually getting that email right now are slim and none. I have to move out into the other room to get it. I don't know why that is. Never used to be that way, but it does seem to be. So anyway, we'll just, at this point, we'll just comment on the black and whites, what's in front of us. So you have, I do sort of start to see a little bit of style from you, which is something that I kind of like, and that is minimalizing things in the image, having your subject and keeping everything else sort of like not there, like to make the subject pop out as much as possible. I think the only thing, again, not from the black and white conversion, but the only thing that I would probably do to this image to make
Crop.
that even, you could. I mean, there's a little bit more on probably both the top and bottom than are necessary. But what I'm seeing is I'm going to go in and add a levels adjustment layer. Yeah, I just got your email. I'm going to brighten this. Is it a cigarette lighter?
Yeah, it's just a Zippo.
So I'm going to brighten that because, again, if you look at the histogram, there's a whole quarter of your image here where there's nothing bright. So we're going to pull that down, make that a little bit brighter, maybe even a little bit in the midtones, and then pull the shadows up to compensate. And when I look at it, if there's any problem in the background, I could mask that out, but there really isn't. It really doesn't overly brighten anything. But now I feel like, there's a little more pop to it, and I can, again, this just looks a little bit on the muddy side, which they do. Most digital images do. And they require a little bit of adjustment like this to bring back that detail. It's intentional, the way they record files. But that's the only thing I would have said on this one, is just maybe brighten it a little bit to make it appear a little sharper, make your subject stand out a little more. But other than that, I like the way you shot it. And then we've got a couple here.
The one is cropped, and I
Right.
didn't really like the cropped one as much because I feel like the grass is like part of golf, so I feel like it adds to the picture a little bit.
Compositionally, I think the cropped one works better just because of where the ball placement is, rather than right in the center on that horizon line. Again, it's a really personal preference thing, but compositionally, this one does. Now, if you could have gotten it pulled back like the other one was, but still gotten the ball in this position, then I think that might have been the best case, might have been the best of both worlds. But again, you've simplified your subject, which is a good thing. It just keeps the eye from wandering. It keeps it from going off from what it is you want them to see. And so when we talk about a story, I don't know what the story is here, but it kind of looks like that wheel was spinning and ripped that guy's hand right off.
Well, not exactly, but
Well, I hope not. So tell me, what was it that made you photograph that?
well, I just had this glove in my car, and I was like, I think that'd be kind of a cool, like, ominous black and white. So I just threw it by my car tire, and here we are.
Well, it is. I mean, you've got the bright silver tones of the wheel, the dark tire, the dark asphalt, and then the painted line, which kind of balances against that wheel a little bit. Compositionally, and like I said, storytelling wise, we don't really know what it is, but we kind of figure there's something there. So that makes it a little more interesting. Only thing I would have done, so I like you've got basically kind of a square crop, which I like, but there is one slight distraction. Do you see it?
Is it either the stick right there or the car, a little bit of the car over on the left?
Yeah, this bright spot, the stick isn't too much of a problem because it blends in almost. It's about the same tonality as what it's laying on. Would I have taken it out? Yeah, I mean, if I was really gonna try to make this perfect as much as I could, maybe I would. But this, to me, is a little more of an issue. I would just would have cropped it into the shadow there so that you didn't see that bright spot. Because again, when you look at an image, squint at it and see what you see. Well, the wheel is definitely the brightest part of the image, but off in that periphery, you can still see that little highlight there.
I originally had that part cropped off on the left, and then I don't. It just didn't feel the same to me. So I don't know.
I'm just envisioning, in fact, if I hold my hand up and cover that, it keeps me from going over there. I want to stay on that glove. I want to stay on the wheel, and that kind of helps me to do that. So this one I think is interesting. Follow the leader, basically, is what it looks like here. And again, it's a very simple image. You've taken some very simple subjects, you've put them on a very simple background. The fact that you have different tonalities in that's what we want to do in black and white. You know, you want to get different colored items so that you can process them and make them in black and white still all appear different. There is a way you could have gone in and adjusted sliders so that all four of these, no matter what color they were, would have looked exactly the same. But where's the fun in that, right? We want them to be different.
Yeah, they were the color goldfish because those ones taste better. And I was like, they got different tones, so that'd be a cool black and white. So.
Yeah, that's definitely a good subject for that. Again, I like how you positioned them. I like the composition. I like the simplicity of it. To the point, actually, where I think this one and that one are probably your strongest image. The glove is interesting, but I'm not as invested in it when I look at it. Compositionally, these two, I think, scream at me just a little bit more. I'll leave it up to you which one you like better. I'm not sure I can pick.
I personally like the Zippo just because like you can see all the scratches in there, but I might have to go with the goldfish because I like the colored image of the Zippo because I just think it looks a lot better and you can like see a little bit of green in the back of the trees. And like, if you get a chance after class, I think you should look at the color one I sent you. But
yeah, I'm going to pull that up on the other computer here
I don't know.
if it'll let me. Again, I'm in a black hole here. It's still trying to download that file, so I won't be able to see it right now. But yeah, so we'll go with the Zippo. That's fine, no problem.
All right.
They're both good. Ross, I know, is not here, but well, let's just look full screen. So that's his original image. Again, not a lot of color to work with there, pretty much all in the yellows and neutrals. I do see some artifacting of some sort. I'm not sure what it is. A little bit of, I don't know, texture that's coming in with the black and white that I don't see in the color one. I'm not sure why that is. Again, we've got a nice converging image. It's simple. There's nothing, you know, again, nothing earth shattering, but nothing to complain about either. And again, I think we just have a little bit too much of a monochrome original to really get a really interesting black and white. It's an interesting image. It's an interesting enough image, but the black and white's not giving us any more pizzazz because of the original colors. All right, now we're on to Sam Kid Photos 9 is what it says here. So that's our original file. Then, so tell me, Samantha, between your original and your cropped, before you converted it to black and white, there's a huge difference in the color saturation. Is that intentional?
Well, kind of, because the light is originally like an orange light. I mean, yeah, an orange light, like just by nature. So I played around with the like white balance.
Gotcha. So
And I
yeah,
don't know, this one just, the white balance one just looks like interesting. Like, you know.
so Yeah, it's definitely better white balance. There's no doubt about that. Um, and I normally recommend that you do that. And I think in this case I would too, because the other thing you notice, if you look at the texture, or not the texture, but the color of the, I'm not sure what that is that it's on, little rug, little like industrial strength doily. I don't know, but whatever it is, it's in the original, the tones are all very similar, but when you adjust to the white balance, now we have different colors popping out in there. So that's kind of, and I can see it in the black and white too. I don't think you would have had, I don't think you would have had as much delineation in these colors in your black and white if you had worked from the original as opposed to this one. So I think you made some good choices there. Um, I'm not really seeing anything that I could have probably improved upon.
I liked when I did the white balance and played around with the white balance that it did color the it's like a rug slash placemat on top of the table. So
Mhm.
that's what it, and it brought out the colors, but as well as the shell came out. Like you can tell there's a shell there rather than the original.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it definitely blends in this one. So let me ask you and the class. I see two things I would have. I like the symmetry that you have in this. When you cropped it in, I think you really brought that out more. But I see two things I would have changed and done differently before I took the picture. Anybody want to take a stab at what that might have been? Two things.
Maybe something with the wire leading to the lamp.
Yeah, I would have probably put the wire out if possible, I would have put it out the backside so that you didn't see it at all rather than across, because it kind of looks a little bit like a rat tail, which is not what you want to see on your table. And there's one other thing. Anybody see anything? So how about the fact that we have this round base or placemat that it's sitting on, with the circle in the middle of it that is probably almost exactly the size of the base of that lamp. Yet the base of the lamp is not sitting on that. It would have probably made the whole image even much more symmetrical if that base had been right in the center of that. And again, I know when you go to shoot these things, you're thinking of the assignment and you're thinking about, the color in the image and converting it to black and white and so forth. But the goal here is to get you to think of all the things, like every week, whatever the topic has been, to think of every one of those things, or as many of them as that will apply to the image that you're shooting, and say, well, how can I improve this a little bit? Sometimes it's after the fact, and sometimes it's before you shoot. And so, yeah, I would have rotated the lamp a little bit to pull the wire out the back way if the cord was long enough, and then put it in the center of that. But minor things, it was a good choice of subject, and an even better choice of cropping, the way you brought that in and made that so much more symmetrical. Finally, we have Sierra. Sierra, I can always count on you to intrigue me a little bit with what you do. So the little lens balls, first of all, I love the titles again. The title is called "I Trapped This Pole in a Ball," and I trapped this pole in a ball, but in black and white. So as goofy as that you may think that is, I think it adds a lot to the whole thought process behind an image. This is one that I like the color image better, but I think, yeah, I think maybe what I might have done here would have been to pull the blues back enough to make that, I don't know. Let's try. Let's take a look and see. Let's open it up. Black and white adjustment layer. And really pull back on the blues. What else do we have in here? Well, we can try to get some increase in the reds and yellows. greens don't really do much at all. And then on top of that, we would have to have done some levels or curves just to give it a little more pop. See if it's any better. The spinning beach ball of death. There we go. There we go. All right. So that's my version, and that's your version. Yeah, again, I'm see. Can you see the difference in just a little sharpness? And look at the difference in the flags, how they set off against that slightly deeper sky. I'm seeing more definition in the reflection of the tabletop, even the building behind it. Yeah, I'm seeing a lot more definition overall. I think again, I really think you do a great job with the thought process, with the creativity of the images that you shoot. I just think that this one probably could have just taken it a little step further, because the whole idea behind the assignment was to make in black and white, to still make things stand out as much as possible. And I think that one stands out just a little bit more than the one on the right, but I do like the image overall. So here's another one using our ball, and then that's the black and white. Now this one, so we have contrasting colors here. I'm wondering if I could, in the black and white, if we can make the background darker and the ball brighter. Let's try that. Oops, not level, sorry. We'll do that later. Oh yeah, I like that. So we increase the reds, yellows, and greens, the top, part of that spectrum, and decrease the blues to really give us a lot more contrast. And then let's see if we need to adjust levels a little bit, just a touch. All right, let's save that. So which one do we like better? Yeah, there's a big difference there, because the blue tones that are in the original image are separate from the warmer tones, and it's easy to drop them down, and again give us a little bit more contrast between the foreground and the background. I mean, I love the image. I think I'm not even sure what you did here, how you did it. It looks like, is this that blue, like spongy material that you find on playgrounds and stuff like that? Is that what this base is?
That's actually the same picnic table that I used in the first
It's
photo.
a picnic table. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, the title of the picture is actually, this is a picnic table.
Yeah, and I didn't even look at that. And now, so what's weird is I was seeing the holes in that picnic table not as holes seeing through them. I was seeing them as three-dimensional objects sitting on the ground, like little planters or something that were protruding forward. That's how I saw it.
Yeah.
Now I completely see what you had there. So the tables are actually black, right? Aren't they?
I thought so.
Yeah, but they recorded, in this case, it recorded as a little bit blue.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wild. But I do think between that and that, I just think that makes it stand out a little bit more. But it's a great, you have a great eye for this stuff, to just be able to place things together in a way that makes you look at, well, it did. It made me look at it and be totally totally in belief that I was seeing something other than what I was seeing. So that's pretty wild. And then our final images, this one, and I'm not sure. So we've got green, blue, not sure how much we'd have been able to separate those, but let's try. So again, if we make our sky dark and our lamp bright, there's got to be some yellow in there too. Of course, now the wall gets yellow or wall gets bright. Yeah, I don't know that there's a, we're definitely going to get a little noisy by doing this. And I don't want to go down and make it look very unnatural like that, but and then let's add some level adjustment on top of that. I don't know if I'm going to like it better, but let's take a look. Yeah, kind of, I don't know. So in both of them, I think the lamppost stands out. I think mine has added a little funky edge to the side of that building. If you can see that little white edge. So that's probably a little bit overdone. Yeah, I think if you, again, if we want our subject to stand out, I think it does stand out in either one, but I think the one on the right has introduced a few, which are correctable, but it's introduced a few artifacts that I don't think I'd want. So probably would have stuck with your version of that. So I definitely think that and that, I'm sorry, it's this one, are your two, or my favorite images anyway. What do you like better?
I think I like the this is a picnic table one better.
I do too. I just think that it's got, well, it fooled me. So it's funny that, you see those drawings that I'm actually reading right now. I'm reading the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey. And there's a drawing in the book. And he talks about when I think it was when he was in college, the professor brought these sketches in and he passed, one side of the room got one sketch, the other side of the room got the other sketch, and they were, I'll show them to you after the break. They were vastly different, but then he showed the whole class a third sketch, and they were violently at odds over what they saw in the sketch. Half of them, because they were influenced by the original sketch that they saw an old woman, and the other half saw a very young woman, and they just couldn't rectify that for the longest time. And that's sort of what you've done here. You've kind of made me see something that wasn't there. And now that you've explained it, I'm like, oh, there, now I see it. So you see that stuff on Facebook all the time, right? What do you see when you look at this? That's kind of what you've done here. And I think it's cool. So I think that's definitely the one I would have gone with too. So before we take a break, let's see who gets what here. Let me get you guys where I can see you all. I think we lost some more people here. Anyway, let's do our voting. Let's start with the lamp in the upper left. I think you all have an idea in mind already. Let's go to the hallway. Bowls, I'm not gonna, let's just say this is a picnic table. All right. The candle with the flowered wall. The card and the shush. The blue hydrangea. Playing cards. The Zippo, and the cat, Bobcat. And so we have a tie between the Zippo and the Bobcat. And so we're just gonna give both of those what they deserve. And then I'm also yeah, I hate to keep throwing points at Sierra, but I just love that image. I think you did such a great job with it that we're gonna give that one a point too. Don't anybody be discouraged though, because these are all we have them all 9. I thought we had 11. Am I missing something? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I feel like I'm missing somebody's. Let me make sure.
Yeah, I was gonna talk to you about that after class, but like I sent it over to Kai and mine aren't on here.
Yeah, and I think I have them. Let me just let me look here. Oh, I think I know what happened. Because I had to bring, I was trying, normally I download these on my laptop and then just send them over to the main machine. And the internet or the transfer was going really slowly. So what I did was put them on a thumb drive. And I think I missed something. I think you may not have been the only one I missed. Let's take a look here. All right, so yours are definitely missing. And Savannah's not here, but hers were not there either. So let me put both of those on there. Yeah, anytime that happens, anytime we miss some images, don't wait, just jump right in and be like, hey, I think you screwed up. All right, so we've got Savannah and Sammy that both need to be here. And bang, there you are. So let's take a quick look at Savannah's first. So again, we just have the black and whites. We don't have the color one. Wow, it looks to me like I'm betting that cat is very different than what it looks like in black and white. I would love to have seen the color one of this, because it looks to me like there's some cool processing going on. And the baby, I'm wondering, so the eyes, of course, the eyes are very bright and expressive. So it would have been cool to play with that original and see if it, but I love the way it looks the way it is. I think the cat probably for me is the more interesting one though, just because I'm betting that it looked a little different in color than it does in black and white. All right, then, oh yes, I did see these. I just missed them. All right, let's get back to this. So there's our, and I know right where this is. I've been there many times. At the top of Wheeling Hill, there's our original, there's our black and white. Again, the black and white to me is a little, so there's two things. Overall, I think the black and white's a little bit muddy, which just needs a little adjustment to bring it up. The other problem with this, and there's no way you could have solved it without, well, there's a little bit you could have done, but it would have been hard to solve this problem without like a flash or some, reflector or some way to bounce light back into the face, because the face has just gone so dark on us here. So let's look at the black and white version of this first. And so overall, I think it has a little bit of muddiness, which I think we can pull up. Yeah, again, if you look at the histogram, there's no detail from about 3/4 of the way up. So we'll pull that back. We'll open a little bit of the midtones, and then we'll drop the shadows again. So there is our, if we think any part of that has gone too bright, we can mask it back off. And then I'm going to try a little thing on the face here just to see if I can bring it out a little bit. Yeah, so it's nothing more than another levels adjustment layer. but I'm only allowing it to affect the face because it's just an action that I wrote that all it does is create a black layer masked adjustment layer so that I don't have to paint the whole thing out and just leave the face. I can just paint the face back in and brighten it up a little bit. And I definitely think that improves it quite a bit because I want to see that face, you know. I don't necessarily even have to see as much detail as we normally will. We can pull that back a little bit. Even that looks good. Leave a little bit of mystery there. But to be able to see into that face a little bit, I think would be really helpful. So let's close that. Let's look at your others. So this was a great place to go for color because, again, there's a lot of different color there. We could play with that all day probably and make a number of different looks because of all the color we've got. Let's just take a quick look at it. So let's say we wanted the blues to be dark, but we wanted, what else is in there? The reds, we can pull those reds up. Might even darken the blues a little more. Yeah, and we still haven't lost our face. The face is still bright enough because of where they are. But again, I don't think what you did, I'm going to close this up. I'm going to save this and close it. I don't think what you did was bad. I just wanted to see if this was any better. Yeah, I think all of you have the same thing. There, you know, just doing the conversion alone without giving it a little more punch has a tendency to make the image a little bit muddy looking and giving it a little, you know, so we did drop the blues here a little bit lower than what yours were and then increasing the overall contrast. The only thing I do like better on yours are the bars. I like them being a little darker. I think it's nice that frames your subject and it stands out. The foreground bars stand out a little bit more in yours than they do in mine. So you actually have a double frame here, which is kind of neat. They're framed by the front bars and the ones at the top. So that's kind of interesting. So if we just look at that and that, they're both interesting in their own ways. I like the leading lines that you've got in the lower image. I would like to see more detail in the face, but other than that, I like the lines. I like the framing that you've got in the top. So your choice.
I think I like the top image better.
Top image, got it. So now we should have 11 images. And we do. So let's try this one more time, just to be sure. So we'll start from the top left, just to make sure we didn't screw this up. The lamp, the hallway, candle, outside card, hydrangea, inside cards, the overlook, the cat. Looks like we're going to end up pretty much back where we were. Zippo, Bobcat, and the picnic table in black and white. Yeah, so actually it ended up, that one got a couple of extra votes there at the end anyway, so you would have gotten the point anyway. So I'm going to leave the three that we had. This one, the cat, I'd love to have seen that original version, but I got to go based on what I see here. So those three are going to get a little extra here. Let me add that in before I forget. So that is Max 1 was yours, right? And the Bobcat was somebody missing. Who is that? Is it Caleb?
Yeah, that was Caleb.
Yep, got it. And then big surprise, Sierra gets one too. Caleb is right on your heels though, Sierra. He is right behind you, and Max isn't far behind. We've got a couple other people that are in good shape there too. All right, so those are our winners for the week. Let me stop sharing that. We are going to take, it is 5:20. We're going to do 15 minutes. We're going to come back at 5:35 and look at the difference between high key and low key photographs. Excitement never ends around here. We'll see you guys in a little bit. Okay, so I got Max's file to download. I still think I like his black and white better than the color, but I can't get it to transfer over to look at anyway.
You do? You like the black and white one better?
I think I do, yeah. And I can't even bring it up now to look at it again. It's beach ball is just spinning over there. Anyway, so I went and found a couple of, I went and found those little sketch things that I was talking about. I want to show you that. Let me get back in here, desktop. So I'm going to show you these sketches and have you just kind of take a look and tell me, like, what do you see when you look at this image? What is the image? How would you describe it? Like, what would you say it is? How old would you say the person is, and what are they wearing? That kind of stuff.
She looks pretty young. She's probably wearing like a wool jacket or something.
She gives me Daisy vibes from Great Gatsby.
Okay. Anybody else?
The way the hair is waved.
But would you all agree that she's, this is not an old woman, probably, right? So let's look now at this one and tell me what you see there. Again, describe the person that you see and how old you think they might be, and anything at all about the image that comes to mind.
She still looks young, but she's more composed of like more black marker, it looks like. Like her jacket especially.
Does everybody agree that this probably is a young person? And so you're thinking that this is a young person in profile, right? Like she's looking away from the sketch. So now look at this. Very different, right? You think this is probably an old woman.
Looks like something from Star Wars.
Yeah, could be. Now let me go back to this second one. And where you're seeing a face turn to the side and a choker around the neck, look at it a different way. This is not a choker. This is the woman's mouth. And this is, she's still kind of in profile, but this is her eye and her nose. Now, how old would you say she is if you look at it a little bit differently? Looks more like 70 or 80, right? Yeah, so it's all about perception. The points that he was making were pretty interesting about when people disagree about things, it's more than likely based on their perception, which we bring our perception with us into every situation. We, our background, our upbringing, all of our experiences in life, have made us the way we are so that we perceive things a certain way. And when somebody else has been brought up extremely differently, their perception is going to be very different. So we can look at the same thing and see something completely different. It's a really cool exercise. There's obviously a lot of deep meaning there if you want to go get into it very deeply, but I just thought it was kind of fun that, Sierra's image did that to me. Like I saw completely something other than what was actually there. So it's kind of neat. All right. So let's take a look at, whoops, what happened? Let's try to get my bridge back open here. All right, some very strange things are going on. I have two versions of Photoshop running. Why is that? And now no bridge. Let me relaunch this. Okay. All right, so let's just take a quick look. We're gonna actually, I probably should open these because they're gonna be much more readable than they are in Bridge here. And let's do the high key first. Interesting. I have a blank page. Oh, there it was. Now I switch to the other one. Now, there we go. So now we're switching back. Okay. So we're talking about high key and low key. High key typically refers to an image that has, I mean, it's very simple actually. An image that has predominantly light tones. So that if you look at the histogram of that image, and again, this is why we're headed in this direction because we've been talking about histograms. If you look at the histogram for a high key image, you're going to see the graph shifted heavily to the right side of the graph because that's where all the lighter and brighter pixels are. Now, what's interesting to know or to note is that you don't have to have of an all white image. Let's see if this works. If I zoom this in. There we go. You don't have to have a completely white image to be considered high key. There are, if you look like in B, C, D, actually all of these have very dark, if not black tones in them. But predominantly the overall feel of the image is light, it's airy, it's you know, predominantly very much lighter toned. So that's what's meant by a high key image. Let's look at the other one. The other side of that coin is low key, and again, it's predominantly darker tones in the image. And there's typically a lot more mood associated with something like this, whereas high key typically has a an upbeat, happy, airy feeling. Low key typically will have a little more mood, a little more mystery, you know, darker overall for sure. But again, even though there are some bright tones, if you look at this camera image, there's a little spot right here that's like pretty much white without detail. The windows in this E image, again, are also very bright. Doesn't mean you can't have those. It's just that overall, you're going to have more dark tones than light tones in an image like this, in a low key image. Let me move back into Bridge and we're going to look at examples of both of those. So when you look at these, I've superimposed the histogram of this particular image or each image. I've superimposed it over the photo. So you can actually see the histogram that this image that is referred to by this image. So again, everything is shifted to the right. It doesn't mean there aren't any black tones. The pixels go all the way to the left side. So there are some that are completely black. But overall, that hump is beyond the midpoint to the right side of the image. We'll just go through and look at a lot of these, a number of these. We'll try anyway. Boy, everything is just crawling on this machine right now. Time for a reboot. There we go. So again, same thing. Not that there are not very dark tones in her hair, eyes, and things like that. And you can see that spike in the left side of that histogram showing you those dark tones, those black, you know, very, very black ones. But overall, whole thing is shifted to the right. And again, the exposure is not, this is not an overexposed image because that's actually towing down. It's coming down as it gets to the edge or towards the right edge of that histogram. So it's light and it's bright, but it's not white without detail. Same thing here. If you look at it, it's actually, you know, coming way down before it gets anywhere near that. So we know that although there might be a few pixels that don't have any detail for the most part, they all do. Here's one that if you look at the histogram, we have some real heavy spiking along the left side. Where do you think that is? Where do you think that dark area, what in the photograph is represented by that? The spike on the left.
Like the shadow.
I was gonna say maybe the blue in the middle.
Yeah, actually right here, right? If I put a, if I had this in Photoshop and I put my cursor over it and was looking at the info palette, this is probably the darkest area. In
I was
fact,
thinking like under her arm a little bit.
yeah, and it's the same thing here. Let's find out. Actually, there's a way to do this. If you want to find out where the brightest and darkest points are in the image, I'm going to put an adjustment layer on here, levels adjustment. And what I'm going to do is hold down the Option key. If you're on Windows, it would be the Alt key, and click the highlight button. And as I start to pull that to the left, what you're seeing, those colored areas, those are the brightest parts of the image. All right, now if I release that and do the same thing on the shadows, those are the darkest areas of the image right there. The very first things that'll show up are the darkest areas. So you're right. The little piece of blue that's in shadow behind the two in front and the little piece underneath her arm, those are the darkest parts of the image. So it's kind of a cool way to find out what's what when you do that. Let's get back to Bridge here. So this, even though it's a little more flattened out, we still have a little hump on the right-hand side. We have spikes on both ends, but primarily the majority of the pixels in this image are to the right of the midpoint, and that denotes a high key image. Same thing here. It's a little more even overall, but still it almost looks like a wave, you know, where the crest of that wave is about 3/4 of the way over to the right-hand side. Big mountain here on the right-hand side. Again, not that there aren't dark tones in there, but primarily this thing is really shifted to the right. This is an underwater shot. Another underwater shot, which does not have any blacks in it at all. In fact, if you look at the histogram, that thing doesn't even start until you get about at least 1/4 of the way over. Everything is really shifted to the right. There are times where a histogram like that is appropriate. This is a proper exposure for this image. If I brought that up, I could bring it up. It would give it a little bit more punch. Let's do that. Put you guys over here. Put an adjustment layer. And if I pull the shadows to the right, even if I don't go all the way to where that is, meaning that I haven't clipped off any detail, it's okay. I still probably would pull the midtones back. I like it both ways. It really doesn't affect it a whole lot. It does, this way does give it just a little more punch. Whereas it's a little flatter without it. But in fact, if you look at the grays in the histogram itself, the background of the histogram, you can see they go from gray to black when I turn that on and off.
What even is this? Like, what was it before you did whatever?
So it's an underwater shot of two girls wrapped in white lace. I'm in the deep end of the pool. They're right at the crest of the shallow end where it starts to drop off. And they are walking down that slope towards me. Their heads are actually out of the water because of where they're at in the pool. So that's why you're seeing that. And then the wings were just added later.
Wait, how did you get a camera underwater?
I have some underwater housings for my cameras. So they are, if you put them on right, they're waterproof. I haven't always put them on right. I've ruined 2 cameras, one here in my pool and one in Las Vegas, which actually I think I'm trying to remember how that happened. Oh, I know what so the first thing was that I forgot to take my housing to Las Vegas. And I got out there and I had 4 sessions to do and I didn't have an underwater housing. So I called back home and I had somebody overnight my housing to me. And it turned out that I could have bought a new housing for less than it cost to ship it out there. So yeah, I kind of got messed up on that. And then once I got it there, it was an older type housing, which was really nothing more than a glorified baggie. I mean, it's better built than that. It costs about $50. But it's really a Ziploc, a heavy duty Ziploc bag that has a protrusion for the lens to go in. It's got some openings for your fingers to go in and operate the camera. And it's got a front lens element that I unfortunately did not screw on tightly enough. And water does not do well with cameras. And so, at least these cameras. So a little bit of water got in and I did ruin that camera. It was insured, so I got it replaced. And then I did the same thing here, but with a different housing. So I upgraded the housing to go from the Ziploc bag type to a company called Altex, which makes, they're sort of like neoprene rubber, and they come in different pieces with different configurations. And I think the way mine was outfitted, like I can put a flash on the camera as well and have all of that enclosed in that housing as a separate piece. I think the way I have it outfitted, it was maybe $200 or $300. And the next step up is about $1,500, and those are heavy-duty plexiglass housings. And they give you a lot of functionality and a lot of control. Like you can literally move everything on your camera. The problem with it is that they are designed for a specific camera. So once that camera is obsolete, you now have a $1,500 paperweight. So that's the reason I've gone with the Altex, which will house pretty much any camera. But yeah, this has an unusual look just simply because their heads are actually out of the water. So you're only seeing the torsos on the way up. But if you look closely, you can see like the sunlight, the highlights on the bottom of the pool. What's been added are a couple of other images of skies and clouds and just some color swirls and things like that. And then of course the wings. The lace, actually, this is all lace over here. It's all flowing in the water behind them and they're wrapped in it, but it's also flowing behind them. But it's a little more of an abstract than I normally do underwater, but I had some fun with it. All right, let's get out of that. So again, you might not think of this as a high key image at first, but again, if you look at the histogram, even though we've got some spiking here, which is more than likely in her boots for the most part, we have everything shifted to the right. Now, it's really slammed up against the right, which if you just saw the histogram, you would think, wow, that's probably overexposed. But what that is representing, first of all, is the border. This white border is completely white. It's a 255 completely white border. And then there are certain areas of the snow, particularly in the background, because there's actually detail in that foreground. I don't know if we can move this around and see, not pretty much with the magnifier, but there really is a lot of texture and detail in the foreground. But in the background, there are a couple of spots that are white without detail. Same day basically, and then same idea. And again, look, it's not slammed against the right this time because I've let the image go all the way to the edge and put the stroke line inside that. So it's not a white border. That's actually part of the photograph. So that's telling me that there's nothing in this picture that is completely white without detail. There is some black, however, and that's in the boots, probably a little touch in her eyes and things like that. Black and white image, again, has some very dark tones in it, but predominantly, if you really did looked at it as a ratio of where are the majority of the pixels, they're off on the right hand side. So I would say that qualifies as a high key image. Now let's look at some low key. So these are the same 4 little girls that we saw in the first image, just shot on a different background. They're wearing the same clothes, same exposures, but The histogram is way, way, way to the left. There are some, because there's a vignette around this, there are some black areas near the corners, which is why this is slammed up here. The histogram doesn't go all the way to the right, doesn't always have to. Excuse me. If I pulled that in anymore, there are certain areas like right here in this girl's dress, I would probably start losing detail. So I don't want to do that. Again, same thing here. There's nothing in this image really that should be completely bright white. Everything in it is really dark toned. Even like the whites of the eyes, they're never really all that bright. The little highlight on his hand is probably the brightest thing in the image, but I don't want to let those go to the point where they're, you know, completely white without detail. Black in this case, I don't care. I know that's right in here, right? You know, the shadow areas behind this, the shorts that he's wearing, parts of the background because it's vignetted. There's just a lot in this image that does not have any detail in the blacks, but it's got all the detail in the world where I want it. And that's right through this hoodie and right through the center section. But the histogram definitely shows us what we've got. Oop. Yeah, so same kind of an idea. This is probably one of the toughest places to shoot a stage performance. This is the Capitol Theater. And, you know, when you're doing something where they want to see the theater, they want to see that there were a lot of people, and they want to see the stage, it's really tough because that stage has got such a hot spotlight right in the center of it. And really the only way to do this in one shot is well, you can't do it in one shot. You have to double expose it. You have to take one image. If the camera's on a tripod, take one image exposed for the audience, take one image exposed for the stage, and blend the two together. So in this case, I've actually let that area down here just sort of, you know, I've brought it down as much as I can, but it's definitely still overly bright. And that's what this little spike on the highlight side of the histogram is. It's right in there. Again, nothing in the histogram is all the way to the right. I think there is actually one little pixel there. Not sure what that is. Must be a highlight on her body, I think, somewhere on the back side here. But predominantly very dark image, and the histogram shows that. Same thing here. Not sure what the spike is, but it's more than likely a little tiny spot on these wings somewhere. It's hard to tell. There could be almost anything in here that's giving us that little spike in the highlights. And this one's interesting. And when you look at this originally, you would think that that dress she's wearing, I think it's actually a beach wrap, with the sun coming through it, you would think is so completely white without detail that there's nothing there. But if you look at the histogram, not so. Nothing in this image goes all the way to the right-hand side. We do have on the dark side, but that's back in these shadow areas, these little caves and so forth in the rock that's in the back. So there was nothing done to this to really separate that deer from the background other than just converting it to black and white and making sure that the tones were stretched out to give us a good black and white. That tree in the background, I'd like it to be a little darker, and I could make it that way pretty easily to make that buck stand out a little bit more, but even just the normal process kind of did that for me. This was, by the way, one of the coldest days I have ever taken pictures outside. This was up at Oglebay. And I'm not kidding you, I'm not exaggerating. We got out of the car. We took 10 steps to get to where we were going to take the photos, whether it was this one or one of the others. I took maybe 8 or 10 pictures, walked back to the car, and by the time I got in, I literally couldn't feel my fingers. It was that, it had to be, air temperature was below zero, and there was a wind chill on top of that. It was the coldest day I've ever shot outside. I'm not a fan of the cold. I hate it. I need to have my toes in sand on a beach. That's where I'm supposed to be for the rest of my life. Hey, I could teach this class from there. Just need internet, right? It's like Brian. Well, do you know who Brian Wilson is? Anybody know who Brian Wilson is? So, yeah, so a couple of you do. So he was one of the founding members of the Beach Boys, and he was the odd one. He was the one that kind of went a little, bloop, off into Never Never Land. But he had a sandbox built around the grand piano in his house so that when he was writing music, he could have his feet in the sand. So when you hear the Beach Boys music and you think, wow, how does it sound so much like it's beach? That's how he did it. He had his feet literally in the sand when he wrote it. Again, nothing bright white in this image, all predominantly dark tones. And here as well, when you look at this, it's a relatively, actually it's very well exposed. And even the highlights of her face, which is the brightest part of the image, really aren't any further up than about, 2/3 of the way on that scale. But of course, if you look around the edges, there is a lot of black without detail. I don't need detail there. I need detail where, in the things that we need to see. Probably should have kept a little bit more in the blouse and in the top part of the jeans and so forth. I could have easily reworked this probably to bring some detail out there. But I was really more concerned with the face and the hair on this one. And yeah, so he definitely is brighter than the background, stands out, but there's really not much here that is bright without detail. A lot of blacks in it. Again, we've got the border, which is completely black. So a lot of what you're seeing on the left is that border. And then in the background itself, and of course, in some of the tattoos as well. This guy is pretty much covered head to toe. He said there's not an event, a major event in his life that's not represented on his body somewhere. I mean, that's a lot of pain to go through, but it is kind of cool, kind of interesting. So those are, again, if you look at them in general, compared to the high key images, they are a little bit more moody. They do make a little more of a statement sometime. The high key images tend to be a little more, like I said, light, airy, fluffy, happy, whatever adjectives you want to use, that tends to apply a little bit more to a high key image than it does a low key image. Now there is one, I'm just quickly going to show you that there is an in between here, and there is something called mid key. And if you look at these histograms, you see that it's pretty well spread out. Like there might be a spike here and there. And is it shifted maybe a little bit to the left side? Possibly, but I'm not sure how much. This one really is spread out enough that it's, I would definitely consider both of these images actually mid-key. This histogram even more so, even though there are spikes left and right. This one's almost completely even throughout. This is what your meter in your camera thinks it's seeing every time you take a picture. It thinks that what it's seeing in front of it is a mixture of lights, darks, and grays. And it tries to average everything out to that. And if you're taking pictures of things like this all day long, your exposure, your camera is going to nail it every time. What's going to happen though, if you rely on your camera's meter and you take a picture like this? Anybody have an idea?
Is it going to be super overexposed?
It's actually going to be underexposed, because the camera sees all this brightness and it tries to dial it back. It tries to darken the image up a little bit. Where conversely, if you're in low key, and you're shooting, let's just take this for an example, and you're using the meter is going to go, wow, that's really dark. We need to bump it up a little bit. And what's going to happen is you're going to have an overexposed image. So the key is to recognize what you have in front of you. And that's when you use your exposure compensation that your camera has. It's a little dial or a little wheel, or sometimes it's on the menu, where you're just saying, look, the exposure on this is probably or you've looked at one image already and you're like, it's a little dark. I just want to bump it up a stop. I want to bump it up a stop and a half, or I want to make it a little darker or whatever. That's what the exposure compensation does. It allows you to use your meter. So your meter gives you an exposure, and then you have to override it and say, let's just make it a little darker or a little bit brighter than that. Now, we talked about this before, but we didn't really hit on it, but it is going to come back up. So let me ask if anybody remembers it. How do I want to say it? If you are shooting in aperture priority mode, so you're setting the aperture, the camera's setting the shutter speed, and you use your exposure compensation dial to make the image brighter or darker, what is the camera actually changing? What function on the camera is it actually changing? This could be a question on the test. So again, the key here is you're an aperture priority. That means that you're setting the aperture manually. The camera is setting the shutter speed. And then you take a picture and you're like, it's a little dark. I'm going to take the exposure compensation and brighten it by 1 stop. What actually happens? What does the camera do, do you think?
Does it have to do with the ISO?
No, the ISO is going to be in aperture priority. The ISO stays stationary. It won't change unless you change it. So what's left? If the ISO is going to stay stationary and you control the aperture, what's the only thing left?
Shutter speed?
Shutter speed.
Yeah. So if you're in aperture priority and you say make it brighter or make it darker, what it's actually going to do is adjust the shutter speed up or down. It'll keep the ISO the same. And because you're in aperture priority, it assumes you want that aperture where you set it and nowhere else. So it'll keep that the same, but it'll just let that shutter speed float up and down. All right. I think that is all we need to look at. So the assignment for next week, which I will post here in a little bit, is to create a high key and a low key image. And if you don't have access to Photoshop to check the histogram, then find your, and of course this can change if you process the file a little bit differently, but if you're not sure if what you're shooting will qualify as high key or low key, once you take a picture, there should be an info button on your camera. If you push that info button, it will should bring up a histogram on the back of your camera. Let me, actually hang on 1 second. I'll pull mine out. Don't know how well you'll see this using a webcam, but let's try. Now I'm in a relatively dark room, so we're going to shoot at a wide open aperture, and oh, I don't have a card in it. Let me see if I can just change that feature. Why you would ever want to shoot, set your camera to shoot with no card in it, I don't know, except if for a situation like this, because you can go shoot stuff all day long and think you're getting stuff and you're not if you do that. So I don't ever recommend that you turn that on. All right, so let's do a quick picture. Okay, so it's showing me, and I'm going to try to get this up here close enough where you can see it. It's showing me where are we at? The image that I took, it's also showing me that there's no card in the camera, but there's an info button. I'm going to put my finger on it right here. And when I push that several times, I'll push it the first time and it just gives me the shutter speed and aperture. The second time, can you see the histogram in the upper right-hand corner there? It gives me that one. If I go again, it actually gives me the 3 color channels, the histogram plus the one at the bottom. And then I go back to the original. So, and I'm going to change that feature right now so I don't screw up. Okay. So depending on the camera that you have, hopefully you have an info button once you take the picture that will allow you to see that information. So if you take a picture and you see that the histogram, I need to remind you, first of all, the histogram on your camera is not totally accurate. Okay, it's based on the settings of your camera, not on the actual file, but it's sort of in the ballpark. It'll sort of get you there. If you see the histogram and you see that it's shifted to the right-hand side, then you probably are dealing with a high key image. Left side is a low key image. If it's somewhere in the middle, you've got mid key, and you'd probably have to work a little bit to get it to one or the other. But that's just an easy way for you to judge as you're shooting what it is that you're getting, whether or not you're in the right key or not. Again, it's not totally accurate because there are a lot of variables once you get beyond that point. But it's a good starting point. It's a good thing to know where it is. Carly, I can see you're checking out really, closely there. Did you find it on yours? No?
Not yet. Probably just mess around a bit more.
Yeah, and believe it or not, you'll find that real quickly, probably if you pull up a manual. If you don't have the manual, you can always find one online, but it'll show you right where that is. But typically there's a button that says info somewhere, and that's what'll bring all of that up. All right, so for next week, we're going to do one high key, one low key image. I will be opening them in Photoshop and looking at your histograms. So let's think for a minute about what, because high key tends to really trip people up more than low key. And I think it's because, for me, it's easy. Like if I look at my high key images here, 1, 2, 3, 4, probably half of these were shot in my studio. So when you put people on a white background, you're already halfway there. But the ones that were outside, so this one, for example, this is on the mansion porch at Ogilby. Those are the mansion columns behind her. So we just kind of went to a spot where I simulated that white background that I would normally have in a studio. Looking down. Snow, I hope we're done with that. So I don't think you're going to see any more of that, I hope. But it's typically a little more difficult to find a subject that is high key as opposed to low key. So let's think about what some of them might be. I mean, you could literally take a white bed sheet and drape it down and use that as your background and put some little figurine on it or something that is light in tone. You could use a little guy like this, put him on a white sheet, and you've got a high key photograph. It just takes a little bit of thought. But if you remember that you're just trying to get the predominantly everything in the image to be to the right side of midtone, doesn't mean that you can't have blacks in it anywhere, but just by ratio, you're going to have way more lights than blacks. What else might work? So if you're outside, let's say, for example, without any trees, and you can see the sky without any trees, and you're using that as your background, particularly on an overcast day, as long as your subject isn't overly dark, like if you had somebody in lighter clothing, probably going to be a high key image. What else? Just trying to give you some ideas here. In mine, the only outside ones, I mean, you could go to a resort and find a nice boat somewhere. And so it's funny, we were walking along the harbor here in Bermuda, and we saw this boat, and she asked me, have you ever done pictures on a boat before? And I said, no, not really. She said, well, I want to. So there was nobody there, but we could hear voices down below deck on this boat. So she wanted pictures on this boat. So she goes over and she starts yelling down for somebody on the boat. And a guy comes out and she said, hey, would you mind if we took some pictures on your boat? And he's like, well, I got to get the captain. So the captain comes up and he's asking questions, what are you using them for and all of this. And I said, it's just, just having some fun. This is just for her portfolio. Nothing, this is not a commercial job or anything. I said, I'll be happy to give you copies of the pictures if you can use them for anything. And he's like, yeah, okay, go ahead. No problem. So they went back down below. They were having breakfast. And we did, 20 minutes of pictures on the boat. So the boat's name is the schooner Heron. And I said, do you have a card or an email address or something? He said, just Google the schooner Heron. You'll find me. So I get back and I type in the schooner Heron, and man, all this stuff comes up. This guy's like famous. This boat is famous. It was in, it was a Johnny Depp movie called the Something Diaries. Can't remember what it was, but Something Diaries. Anyway, his boat was used in that, and he's based out of Boston, and what he does basically is do private tours anywhere in the world for people that want to go out on a boat. He has sailed 45,000 people so far on this boat all over the world. So he's like a big deal, right? And I start sending him, I sent him some pictures and never got a response. I think I sent him a message another time, never got a response. So I thought, well, he's busy, he's not interested, whatever. And then I'm talking to Daniela one day and I mentioned him, and she says, called him by name. And I said, you know him by, she said, yeah, we talk all the time. I'm like, yeah, nice. So he has no interest in me whatsoever, but he'll talk to you all the time. I'm the one with the pictures, but I guess he's got the Rum Diaries. Maybe that was it. Something like that. I guess he's probably got enough pictures and film of his boat that he didn't need mine, but he was nice enough to let us use it. It was kind of fun. Little side story. But yeah, you can find things like that. If you are going to work with people, the biggest thing you can do, the biggest help you can give yourself is have them wearing light colored clothing. And then just find an area that's not dark, that has a lot of light tones to it, and bang, you've got high key. If you look behind me, even if I'm standing here in a white t-shirt in front of that background, you've got a high key image. That's kind of boring. Do something a little more visually interesting than that, but I just want to give you an idea for, the types of things that'll work. All right, so low key is a lot easier. Go outside at night and you have low key. So that is our assignment for next week, is one of each, or at least one of each. You can do more if you want. Let me pull this up where I can see everybody. Do we have any questions? Yeah, I know that head shake. It's like looking at the clock. Hey, it's only 20 after 6. If I shake my head no, we get a little extra time back. Well, I don't know about you. I'm finally over the daylight savings time switch. It takes about a week. Like, man, for a week, I'm just not quite right, but I'm finally over that. So this is time that I'll give you back. You get an extra, I don't know how long. I don't even know how long this class is supposed to be. One semester, they tell me 2 hours and 50 minutes. Another semester, they tell me 2.5 hours. So I don't even know. Maybe by the time we get to fall, if we're back in seat for everybody, we'll have something a little more consistent. But right now, I'm basing this on content and not time. When we go over the material we need to cover and everybody feels pretty secure with it, then we're going to move on. So, but again, this week, any questions at all that you have, any snags that you run into, text me, email me, whatever, be happy to help. Other than that, we will see all of you. Let me get this stopped in a week. And that's it for this week. Later.